One very, very important thing that I've learned about cults as I've had to leave my own narcissistic family, which I'm starting to really think that all narcissistic families are just cults. Cults of who can share, cults of shared delusion. And the reason why I even say that is because as a black sheep myself, but truly just the autistic one that couldn't put up with the lies, the second you break the line of comfort that is holding everything together, which is by like telling the truth, instead of people wanting to like reorganize in alignment with that truth, so like there isn't this animosity or this resentment or this like kind of individualism going on, they just kick you out of the group. They're just like, fuck you. We're enjoying this life because there's so many other things we don't have to address when we just live in this delusional fantasy. But you being here, wanting to tell the truth and help people with their mental health, you're fucking it up for all of us. Excommunication! But this is a little insight that I've had, and I'm probably going to add into one of these longer videos that I make. And it's, if you want to figure out if that's a cult you're looking at, or you're in, or a community that you're in, I'll tell you one thing right here. Cults infantilize adults, making them eternal children. Communities raise children into adults, allowing them to become the adults and become the members of a community that can take part in raising future generations of children. And the reason why you have to keep adults infantilized in these cult communities is because you need to keep them on bended knee, thinking that their whole entire worth comes out of the validation they can get from the narcissist or the leader of their community. But then a lot of victims of this type of abuse end up just perpetuating it or really being comfortable in it because it allows them to release the responsibility of being their own salvation, of being the person that has to stand up and face their demons, being the person that has to address their flaws, being the person that has to look in the mirror when they're uncomfortable with themselves or after they've been rejected and choosing to accept themselves. That's a whole lot of responsibility. And a lot of us are not as many overwhelming responsibilities that we have taken to be seen as adults in society. We still don't have that confidence or that acceptance within ourselves to truly emulate this identity of the validation that we're asking for. But back to the point, the reason why it's so important to cultivate this community of really adult children is because you have to have an adult body serving you with the self-induced psychosis that they cannot save or sustain their own being, or it just wouldn't be as valuable as being accepted by the narcissist. And that allows the narcissist to get by and not have to take care of themselves, but they don't have to because, again, the victim of this situation they've created is now thinking that they are nothing without being able to serve ultimately their master or their narcissist. But all this does, when done on like a mass scale, is destabilize communities and then force a bunch of people who were once functioning members of communities to all just like cut off their hedges or just trim off themselves in whatever position or identity will allow them to get acceptance of the narcissist at the mercy of the significance of whatever the fuck the community was meant for or what the community was doing in the first place, which was to humble all the people in the community enough to meet the goals that will allow the needs of the people to be served on the back end, knowing that the sacrifice would be meeting our own individual needs on the front end, which is what a real community is. But think about something like this. Think about how under patriarchy too, most of the men who buy into it are very insecure or not properly validated in masculinity outside of it. So because of that, when you're selling something like marriage to a bunch of men that you've just colonized and trying to convince to disrespect and really dehumanize the women in their communities as a means for acceptance of men from another community, you have to sell the illusion that your family is not a community. It's a cult of servitude of the patriarch. And look at that. You worthless sack of shit who goes to work just like a number and nobody gives a fuck about you. Nobody cares about you in society. You don't even have time to engage in society. All you do is go to work, get yelled at all day, called a piece of shit, and then given a handful of money that's not enough to pay your bills, and you go home and you might or might not argue with the family that you've also created because you don't even know them enough to understand that, hey, they have needs too that extend beyond your inability to be there. But again, when we all get together and support this illusion, which is not all, it's just men getting together and supporting this, then the man becomes the master of his house, not the leader of his house, the master of his house. And then we just kind of slide that over and say, well, oh, the man provides, the man provides. Well, you only provide to own the environment. Because if everybody in the house could provide, then think about that. And this almost ties into the video I was talking to about ownership too. If everybody in the household could provide, then we'd be at the mercy of who could provide, not exclusively the mercy of the patriarch. That's why we have to double down with this whole marriage culture by also dehumanizing women out of accessing their own livelihood in society. And that's how we're literally living in a society that is a cult of just all these different systems of oppression to hide the master who is winning from all of this, but get all of us children in this cult community to point the finger at each other and tear each other down, even to each other, over validation and acceptance of the master of our society, which is not one master, one person. It is the ruling class of our society, the wealthy people who have bought our country and are about to implement their religion, that is Project 2025, into federal law. Now, how does that tie into, or I don't know if we even talked about community or the importance of community and my newfound understanding of that, which is, again, I'm pretty sure I said this, everybody humbles themselves and their individual needs on the front end as a means of serving the community, because the goal has to be met by everybody participating. And on the back end of that, the abundance that comes from that, the life that comes from that, we serve the community with as a means of thanking you, appreciating you for the work that you've done, for the commitment that you've made to be a part of something bigger than yourself. And the crazy thing, you guys might not want to accept this, but the people who do this the best are the autistic subculture people, especially the autistic Redditors. But the autistic subculture people, the ones who are rejected by the mainstream culture, which somehow happens to be like a religious cult as well, we are all like this family of rejected identities and expressions of humanity. But the problem is that we usually end up taking negative life paths because we're individualized, and then more on top of that, bullied, humiliated, shamed, all types of like guilt tripped, all types of nasty shit, trying to get pushed out of those identities that we really are as a means of being accepted by the cult that is mainstream culture, instead of being able to have mediums like social media and whatnot to connect directly to other people that feel lonely and feel individualized like us, to build communities of like-minded people, to then be more than just the individual lonely person that we felt like we were in our lives, but connected to something, again, bigger than ourselves. And it's hard. And the reason why I said autistic people is because, like, holistic people, I don't even think you guys know what a community is. Like, you guys are so self-rejecting and so, like, craving validation and acceptance of a social culture that literally dehumanizes everybody, that you guys get your satisfaction being more human or more able to be validated by this system because it's built for holistic people rather than actually having an authentic sense of culture. Because your culture is just like, well, I can work a job and like maintain a relationship. Yeah, the rest of us are actually fucking cool out here. We're just like starving and shit.